Welcome back to the Connected podcast. I'm thrilled to bring you an extraordinary collection in which some incredible students take the driver's seat and host dynamic conversations with professionals from across the higher education sector, discussing the vital topic of student belonging. In today's episode, we have Gem Standen talking to Professor Amanda Millmore from the University of Reading. Amanda is a Professor of Law and the School Director of Academic Tutoring. Amanda has joined Gem today to talk about some exciting student-staff partnership projects.
So I know that your programme is called the Hidden Curriculum. Is that correct? Yes?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, I mean, for me, starting uni was a massive culture shock. Being first in family from a BTEC background. I was wondering, sort of, for people like myself and for the wider student body, what made you want to tackle the hidden curriculum?
Yeah, so we have lots of students at Reading. We have students from very diverse backgrounds. We have lots of international students as well. We have mature students, we have commuters, we have carers, and we have the straightforward 18-year-olds who've come straight through school from A-level. But one of the things that we've found is the language of university can be quite alien for people, particularly when you've come from school where you're given a timetable and you start at 9 o'clock in the morning and you go from class to class and it's all very straightforward and the teacher gives you a textbook and that's how it works. So it became sort of, I'd read about it, I'd heard people speak about the hidden curriculum, but it seemed to me that this was something that we could really improve our communication with students. And I'm a first generation student many years ago, didn't know that was a thing, didn't know what it was, but I remember that I was given a really useful little booklet with lots of the sort of the terms of art that the student union produced. And for me, I didn't know if I needed to take a duvet with me to university. It sounds like a strange thing, but nobody tells you this. And this was the days before the internet. And obviously there's so much information for students out there. But what we wanted to do was to make something that was meaningful for our students. And the best way of doing that, of course, is to ask our students what they wish they'd known. So that's where we started. We recruited a group of first generation students across the year groups, including international students, and said, what do you wish somebody had told you before you started? So that was where we sort of originated with this particular project.
Well, that's lovely. And it segues quite nicely into my next question, really, which is what kind of terms or language did students say or feedback that they were confused by when they began studying with you?
So some of it's really basic stuff that we take for granted, and it's the hidden curriculum is about that sort of gap between expectation and reality, and about that all the sort of unsaid things. So, for example, students didn't know what's the difference between a tutorial and a lecture. What's the difference between a tutorial and a seminar and a workshop? I mean, who knows, frankly, sometimes. So we've explained what we tried to do was find the things that might be ambiguous or confusing. So we started with basic stuff like, we now have semesters in Reading. We used to have terms, but what's the structure of the year? What is an academic? What does that mean? Because you've had teachers before or college tutors. And we looked at things like formative and summative work. So, your formative work that's just for feedback, but summative counts towards your degree. What about modules? What is a module when it comes down to it? So some really basic things, but we grouped them into different areas. So we had a section about the teaching, so using that kind of language. We had a section about some of the wider things in the university, including in law, we have, for example, pro bono work, which is volunteering. But of course, we use a bit of Latin just to confuse everybody. So what does that mean? What does co-curricular mean if you're talking about co-curricular activities? And I think universities are really dreadful for acronyms. So I mean, it seems to be a goal of most academics to have an acronym that they've created. And I've done it myself this year. I've got a group that I've created an acronym, and I'm never so proud of myself for doing it, but it doesn't help demystify things for students. Another thing we looked at was websites. There are so many websites that the students need to use, from our virtual learning environment to the University General website, to the one where all their data about their personal life and their results is stored. So how do they know which one they should be doing? And we also had who to ask for help. So it was broader than just the academic side. It was more about university life generally. And the students came up with great long lists of these things, and then we organised them and made them into a booklet with some straightforward language about what these things actually meant.
Excellent. So within the content that the students helped you produce, what was the most important part about their voice being front and centre of that?
Well, the reality is, I think I know what students don't know, but who am I to say? You know, I'm going back to trying to remember what it was like when I was 18, when I was a new student. So by having the students themselves create what they needed, we were able to meet their needs much better. Little things like the organisation, it was like, how do we organise all this information? We did it in different sections and we colour coded them, which made it nice. We did it all on a Word document. It wasn't fancy. I'm a lawyer. I'm not anybody particularly artistic, but tables with different colours with a few nice pictures in amongst it. It's very easy to update, so that's really important. Silly things like within each section, I would have organised it by what I think is most important. The students said, no, we want it alphabetically, so we can find that information within each section. We kept it to effectively so 4 pages, so 8 A4 sides, because if it was too big, people wouldn't read it. We also printed it, which was really fundamental, because students said, if you send it to us electronically, it just gets lost. If you've got it physically, you can pin it on a notice board, stick it on your desk, because we hoped it would be something they'd come back to. And that was really important. And then we've been very fortunate. This has helped expand. We've expanded it across the university. So our diversity and inclusion team saw it and went, oh, can we use this? And so they have used some of the core terms from the glossary in guides for commuter students, for our mature students, and they have particular guides for particular groups of students. So that's been really positive. And then what's really lovely is I've shared this at various conferences, and colleagues from across the sector have picked it up, not just lawyers. So it's now in a sort of environmental science department up in Salford, as well as the law department at King's. And across the sector, people have gone, actually, this is a quick and easy thing to do. It's a proper quick win. And by having the students say what they think matters, and what's been really lovely is watching other universities bring students on board to do this. Because again, you know, the academics have their idea, but that's part of the problem, isn't it? We assume too much.
I agree with you entirely. So do you think that your project and projects like this help students to feel more at home? How do you feel it contributes toward belonging more holistically?
So the idea was to sort of democratize everything and to make it so that nobody's embarrassed about asking what these strange things are, what they mean. We gave it to all of our new students. That was our new incoming foundation and first year students, but also we have international transfer students and some postgrads. We've even shared it with staff who are new, because that helps them to learn the language of our university. The idea is that if people have got that, then they can sort of hit the ground running a little bit more when they come in. And it's about making students feel part of the law school, but also part of the university, but also feeling like they are a lawyer in training. Or we also have criminology students, and we have a special alternative one for them, because of course not all the legal terms matter. So there's some criminology specific terms in their glossary. And the students, they also made little videos with top tips for their fellow students. And again, I can give the tips and students would go, oh yeah, she's telling me what to do. You get it from another student, recorded on a mobile phone. It's very low key, but it's a really nice, welcoming way of saying, hey, we remember what it was like to be in your shoes. And I think some of that helps, because students saying, oh, I remember how nervous I was, that makes you feel that little bit better, that it's not just you feeling a bit scared when you come in.
Thank you so much. It's really, really interesting. I was also looking at your abstract, and I could see that you run a number of different projects that sort of promote belonging. Um, one looking at the experiences of disabled students using a blended sort of learning approach. So what sort of brought about this particular project? Would you mind providing us a little bit of an insight into
Of
what that involved?
course. Yeah, so this was a project that came out in the middle of the pandemic. So we had moved online, and in my role, I teach students across the undergraduate years on our law programme. So I have a lot of contact with students. Of course, in the pandemic, it was all very virtual. And I talk to students. Part of my role is a sort of pastoral welfare role. So students talk to me, and I was getting this sense that students were really struggling with our online provision in the pandemic. They were missing those face-to-face moments and were finding it very hard to navigate their way around our virtual learning environment. Um, and in general, I mean, my approach is if we can get it right for our students with disabilities, we're getting it right for most people. So let's get the basics right. Let's support those students, and actually it will help all the others as well. And so having spotted that particularly students with neurodiversity were struggling, our students with autism, our students with ADHD in particular, were telling me, it's chaos. I don't know where to look. I don't know where to start. We had the craziness of a welcome meeting that we couldn't tell the students how to log on to do it because they hadn't been inducted. We were in this awful spiral of chaos. And so we spoke, I basically set up a partnership project, got some funding because I do think it's really important to pay students for their time. And the students, again, told us what was working and what wasn't. And as I always say to them, I can't fix everything, but we'll do what we can. And those students were very open with us and very clear about what was working and what wasn't. And this was the time where we were partially in person. A lot of things had moved online. So we were learning as we go along, and students were very tolerant of staff who were having to manage how to suddenly teach in a virtual way. But we weren't getting it right all the time, and that was crucial.
So how did the approach that you took support students more in respect of their learning? Did you find it opened up or limited the opportunities for them?
So we recruited a group of students, including postgrads as well as undergrads, all who declared they had disabilities or long-term conditions, and asked them for their personal experience. They also surveyed the wider cohort. And some of the messaging that was coming through was we needed to chunk our videos better. Instead of having a 2-hour long recording, let's have 15-20 minute chunks just to make it simpler. What we ended up with was a set of recommendations from the students, from their own experiences, but also their wider peer group. And we actually had a really successful questionnaire which went out to all students. And when you looked at what they were happy with and unhappy with, and I think at the time, with everybody online for most of the time, we got a better response rate than we might have had today in person. But it was things like they didn't know where to find things on the virtual learning environment. The impact of that has been huge. The students actually went to a meeting with staff about our virtual learning environment and said, can we have a week by week approach rather than here's the learning materials, here's the lectures, here's the assessments, here's the seminar work. Because if we miss a week, we don't know where to start. And that is now a template that's used across the university. So it had real impact. We started it in the law school and then it expanded because we shared our report with anybody who would listen. So we had a few quick wins again. It's always worth, making those quick changes that you can. But in the long run, it's actually made a huge impact because we've standardized what our virtual learning environment looks like. So every module looks the same and students know where to find things. We had roadmaps of what each module should look like. And the idea was, I teach across many modules. I was looking at them going, well, where do you want my lecture videos put? And if I don't know, how on earth is a student going to know what to do? So it's actually been quite amazing the impact that those students had. Just 5 students working on behalf of many. So really important.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. And I know that many people listening to this will be going, how did you get such a buy-in on your survey? So I have to ask that question, if that's
Yeah, I mean, I
okay.
think I think in reality it was the students getting other students to complete a survey. Because if I send an
Right, okay.
email, I'm a big fan of getting students to do the research. So I've had students run focus groups. So we started with a big cohort-wide survey. And because the students were pushing it out, they tried social channels, they tried all those sort of alternate ways of getting hold of other students, rather than just an email from an academic, which can be a little, oh, we'll ignore that, it's Amanda again, or whatever it might be. Um, they they put little pictures on the questionnaire. They told me it looked too boring the way I'd done it. They helped devise the questionnaire. We had to keep it short. They would have written far more questions. I'm like, not too long. So we had about 12 questions. So it took 2 or 3 minutes. Lots of scales. How do you feel about different things? So obviously some free text. And then what we did is we got the students to run focus groups. And I'm really passionate about that because if I run a focus group, then there's that power differential. If my students run it, they're on the same level. And I think students are much more open to talking to other students. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a perfectly run focus group. You just have to get people talking and listen to them. And that's what we did. And so it was really quite powerful getting that. And then getting the buy-in from senior people to say, read this report, this is important.
That sounds amazing, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I definitely, as a student, when you're getting lots of university-led emails asking for feedback, it can be much easier to sort of bypass those and sort of want to help your peers. So that's a really, really lovely approach. I like that. In terms of your further projects, I'm looking down here and seeing that you have one on alumni interviews on legal research, which I know is quite specific for your school, but I thought that sounded really interesting. Um, so obviously it's a wonderful way to bridge a gap between uni and working life. What is it that you're finding that your alumni are saying that they wish they had known?
So this came out of a conversation with our law librarian about, are we using the right resources? Are we teaching the students the right research skills that they need as they go into work? And he wanted to find out more and said, well, Amanda, you've got lots of contacts on LinkedIn of former students. Do you think you could find this out? So I said yes, but on condition that we get students involved. And so we set up another student staff partnership project, which is my way of doing everything, again funded to pay. I have to knock on doors and apply for lots of little pots of funding, but I do think it's important to pay the students. And what we did was we initially contacted, we had some help from our alumni office to get in contact with people. We managed to contact we got responses from about 130 alumni, from people who just graduated to people who'd graduated 30, 40, 50 years ago. Not just lawyers, because not everybody goes on to become a lawyer. So we've got a real broad range of voices, which is really, really nice. And to be honest, the older the people were, the more fondly I think they remember their studies. And they're like, I don't think there was anything missing from what you taught me. Whereas I think the students who had more recently graduated, that we were very much looking at legal research skills, and did we teach you the right skills? Were there things you wish you'd known? And in particular, there were certain sources that they use in practice that we don't have at the university. So our law librarian is using this to sort of bang the drum for, it would be good to have this resource because that's what people use in practice. So that's been really helpful. But what we did was we started with a questionnaire, which alumni were very, very generous in giving their time. We weren't asking for money, that helps, I think. And then we asked if they'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation. And I had 5 students, first and second year undergrads, and we married them up with alumni, trying to match. I had a student who wanted to be a barrister, so we tried to give them the barrister alumni. I had somebody who wanted to be a commercial solicitor, so we tried to marry them up with the right people. And they did interviews over Teams. And we had some questions, but they also had a bit of sort of freedom to explore. So they had direct contact with the alumni, all of whom were very generous with their time and very kind and helpful.
That sounds fascinating. And for the students that were part of that sort of got married up with alumni, did you feel that increased their sense of belonging to sort of see people that had been previously through the process before?
Yes, I mean, I think it's really important for our students that they feel part of the university, but also part of the law school and as part of the professions. Even if they're not going into being lawyers, you've got that law degree. Hopefully, they can see that that's where they're headed. Um, and I think it helped them to see the history, if you like, of oh, that's what's happened in the past, but also that's where it could take me in the future. And the students gained so much, not just from I mean, it was scary for them. They were having to make arrangements with like senior lawyers to have a meeting. But I kept saying to them, look, these people are happy to talk to you and are happy to give their time. And I think it helped them feel part of the profession in many ways, because I think the legal profession is actually very generous at giving its time for work experience and for this kind of thing. So it really helps cement their identity as lawyers in training and as law students, part of our university. So it was lovely.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I think this will be my final question, if that's all right, Amanda.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to students like myself who would like to be more involved with shaping learning experiences and getting involved in these types of experiences?
So, I mean, I always think it's good to say yes to opportunities when you see them. It's also good to advocate for them. And if you see projects either institutionally or within your department, where's the student voice in that? I think universities are much better at having student voice, but we don't want tokenistic voice. You want actual meaningful opportunities for you to be listened to. And I think sometimes these very small projects are a great way of making a difference and having an impact. And one of the things I think is we've tried to create a sort of culture of partnership working where students can see that there was a project, the students got involved, their voice made a difference, and it makes other students more inclined to get involved in the future. So obviously, if you've got that nice virtuous circle, getting volunteers is easy for me as an academic, but also trying to encourage students who you may not hear from. So, I mean, I've obviously got a project here with first generation students, another with students with disabilities, and it's not done for a tokenistic reason. It's done because I think their voices are really powerful in that project. But to give the students confidence. So for staff, I think it's really important to empower the students that you really do value their voice and that they bring as much to the partnership as you do. So that's my message to academics, but to students, it's sometimes, don't be shy. You have to be brave. You have to step up to a challenge. And you would be surprised at how open to listening many academics are. And the ones who are offering these projects really want to hear from you. And that's, I know it's preaching to the choir. If I'm running a project, it's because I want to hear from students. But if you know that you're wanted and know that your voice is needed, then hopefully it gives you the confidence as a student to say, I'll give that a go. And the skills that you develop doing these things are amazing. And it's something really interesting to talk about in interviews and applications when you're going forward into the world of work. So I think they're a win-win in my view. So.
No, they sound absolutely fantastic, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing. Before we close today's call, I wondered if there was anything else that I hadn't asked you that you wanted to highlight.
No, I just think I'd encourage every academic to think about how they can get students working with them, whether it's module design, whether it's a review of a module, a review of assessment, or whether it's looking at the broader things, your tutoring system, or just getting, use your students. They have a wealth of knowledge, and I think that's really important. And to students, if people are asking for your voice, whether it's a module evaluation or whether it's a bigger project, tell us, because it does make a difference.
Thank you for listening to the Connected podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out the rest of our extraordinary Voices of Belonging collection and stay connected.